Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, frankly unprecedented move by the U.S. Treasury, aimed at completely isolating Iran's economy through a global financial siege. The administration is officially calling this Operation Economic Outcast. And make no mistake, it is a huge escalation in financial warfare. We're going to break down exactly what this all means, how the U.S. actually plans to pull it off, and the massive global ripple effects it's designed to trigger.
To really grasp the tone of this campaign, we just have to look at the words of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He called this the economic asphyxiation of this regime. That's intense, right? This isn't about making small policy tweaks or just managing a threat anymore. The U.S. is actively trying to end it by severing every single economic lifeline until Tehran is left standing entirely alone on the world stage. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the Economic Outcast strategy, targeting 5 vital lifelines, the power of secondary sanctions, the global ultimatum, and finally, the market and geopolitical impacts.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the Economic Outcast strategy, and this idea of a zero leakage approach.
So, the stated goal of the administration here is what they're calling zero leakage. But what does that actually mean in the real world? It literally means zero breathing room. No space for the regime to rebuild capacity, fund the military, or keep operations running. The Treasury says they've meticulously mapped out every network and every facilitator used to smuggle oil and dodge past sanctions. The court message is pretty simple. Operating in the gray areas of international finance, that's no longer going to fly, and nobody can pretend they're blind to it anymore.
And they aren't waiting around either. Right out of the gate, over 60 entities, individuals and vessels all over the globe are already getting hit with sanctions. These are the specific players the U.S. has flagged for helping procure illicit tech, running cyber operations, and generating critical oil revenue.
Moving on to part 2, targeting 5 vital lifelines, the crucial sectors in this economic siege. The Treasury is zeroing in on 5 very specific arteries here: digital assets, technology, gold, aviation, and shipping. These are basically the main channels exploited to move wealth and resources around internationally. By throwing a massive blanket of sanctions risk over these exact 5 sectors, the U.S. wants to collapse every last option for sustaining that economy. Basically, if you are touching these sectors in relation to Iran, you are now standing directly in the crosshairs of American enforcement. Which brings us to part 3, the power of secondary sanctions, and expanding this reach globally.
Now, you might be thinking, how on earth does the U.S. practically enforce its own rules on independent, sovereign nations and businesses halfway across the globe? Well, to answer that, we have to look at the absolute heaviest hitter in the Treasury's playbook.
It all comes down to secondary sanctions. Essentially, these are penalties slapped on third-party countries, foreign banks, or shipping firms just for doing business with a sanctioned nation. The Secretary made it crystal clear that nobody is out of reach. If any bank, anywhere, helps launder money or turns Iranian oil into cash, they're going to get completely booted from the U.S. dollar system. And let's be real, in global finance, getting cut off from the U.S. dollar is basically a corporate death sentence. And during the briefing, the Secretary used this really ominous phrase, warning that, quote, the clock just started ticking. Right now, they're doing a lot of quiet diplomacy. That means they are behind closed doors, telling foreign banks exactly what is expected of them, and giving them a very strict timeline to shut things down voluntarily. Because if they don't, the hammer of unilateral sanctions is going to fall hard, and offending banks will just go dark. This leads right into part 4, the global ultimatum, and the stark choice for world leaders.
The U.S. president is essentially getting on the phone and laying out a completely binary choice to international leaders. Door number 1, comply with the United States, cut ties with the regime, and reap the rewards of partnership and prosperity. Door number 2, keep enabling them and get ready to share in their total economic isolation. The administration is officially done with what they see as appeasement. They are forcing the world to pick a side, the U.S. financial system or Tehran. But there is a tiny bit of wiggle room. The U.S. is offering what they call a cure period. You can think of it as a temporary grace window for these entities to remedy their bad behavior. When reporters asked why they didn't just drop all the sanctions immediately today, the Secretary said they don't want to needlessly blow up the global financial system. So this is the warning shot. It's a chance to correct course. But he heavily stressed that U.S. patience is definitely not infinite, and this window is going to close fast.
Finally, let's wrap up with part 5, market and geopolitical impacts and the wider ripple effect.
We are literally already seeing the tectonic plates shift here. The Treasury briefing specifically pointed out the United Arab Emirates, who are already taking serious steps to sever business ties. The U.S. is framing this not as some random coincidence, but as a direct result of this immense American pressure. They're basically using the UAE to prove that past approaches didn't work for Gulf nations, and they're signaling that a whole lot of other countries might be following the UAE's lead very soon.
What's kind of wild, though, is the contrast with the domestic scene. While they're launching this massive global siege today, the Treasury confirmed that their standard domestic debt management hasn't changed one bit. They did their regular quarterly refunding announcement a couple weeks ago, and their next bond operation is still perfectly on schedule for September 9th. So they are projecting total business-as-usual stability at home while waging this aggressive financial operation abroad.
So, looking at the sheer scale of Operation Economic Outcast, the threats of secondary sanctions, and this ticking clock, we are left with a massive question to chew on. Is this cure period actually going to successfully strong-arm the global financial system into total compliance? Or, by flexing this much financial muscle and weaponizing the US dollar, is the US inadvertently pushing its adversaries to just bypass the American financial system altogether? It is an incredibly high-stakes gamble, and how it plays out is going to shape the global economy for years to come. Thanks for hanging out with us for this explainer, and keep questioning the wider impact of these massive global shifts.